All right, so you know what always seems to get everyone talking, like instantly grabs your attention? It's always Hollywood drama, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who doesn't love a little peek behind the curtain?
It's true. And recently, there's been a whole lot of buzz surrounding Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni.
Yeah, their names have been popping up everywhere.
Seems like they're caught up in some legal stuff, and honestly, it feels like something ripped straight from a movie script.
Totally. I mean, the whole situation is just wild.
So, for today's deep dive, we're gonna really get into it.
Buckle up.
We're gonna be taking a close look at this recent YouTube video by Candace Owens. She goes deep, really unpacks what's going on with this legal battle between Lively and Baldoni.
And get this. There are all these other interconnected stories that are just as fascinating. Stuff you might not have even heard about yet.
Exactly. And just to be clear, we're not just here to gossip about celebrities.
No, no, no.
This deep dive is about going deeper, right?
Absolutely.
As we get into this, you'll see how it all connects to bigger things, like how reputations are built and destroyed, how legal battles are fought and won.
Oh, and the whole crazy world of online commentary. That's a whole other beast.
It really is. Okay, so to kick things off, what really jumped out at you from Owen's video?
Well, right off the bat, she starts with a personal update mentioning she got sick
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
from eating yogurt, of all things. And it's kind of interesting how even something like that, a seemingly small detail, becomes this thing people online latch onto.
It's wild, isn't it? The internet is always watching, always speculating. Like, the second Owens is a little quiet, people start wondering what's up. It just shows you the kind of scrutiny public figures are under all the time.
It's relentless.
But then, on a brighter note, Owens also shared some really happy news. Her husband finally became a U.S. citizen after, like, a 6-year process.
Wow, that's quite a journey.
It really is. And she even mentioned their celebratory American meal burgers and fries. It's just this down-to-earth moment that reminds you that at the end of the day, these are real people with real lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, behind all the headlines, there's a human story.
Right, right. Okay, so let's get into the Hollywood stuff now. Owens quickly moves on to a controversy involving Ryan Reynolds and his daughter. And man, this one raised some eyebrows for me.
Yeah, this is where things start to get a little tricky.
There's this allegation that Reynolds, get this, supposedly made his 7-year-old daughter say lines in the new Deadpool Wolverine movie that Owens considered, well, inappropriate. And as a parent myself, I can't help but wonder what was going on there.
It's definitely something that makes you think. And the specific line Owens mentioned, wow, it was, when I want your opinion, I'll take Wolverines out of your mouth. I mean, for a young child, that's a pretty mature and aggressive thing to say.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, Owens even played audio of Reynolds himself admitting that his daughter was initially uncomfortable saying those lines.
Right, and that makes it even more complicated. Like, even if it was all meant to be funny, it doesn't erase that initial discomfort.
And then Owens plays this other audio clip of Reynolds and the director, Sean Levy, laughing about making the kid repeat the line over and over. She mentions a range, something crazy, like 70 to 500 takes.
Wow.
I know, right? And when you hear that, I mean, it kind of makes you question the whole atmosphere on set, doesn't
It
it?
really does. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. You're listening to this as a parent, maybe.
Mhm.
It raises all these questions about how child actors are treated, what kind of pressure they face, and it makes you compare it to, the accusations against Justin Baldoni, which are really serious.
It's such a stark contrast.
You start thinking about different standards, different expectations in different professional environments, and when you add kids into the mix, it gets even more complicated.
It does. So speaking of Baldoni, Owens then jumps to another major development. Ari Emanuel stepping down as the CEO of Endeavor.
Huge news.
Huge. And for those who might not know, Endeavor is this massive company, owns UFC, WME, the whole shebang. And this all comes after a, wait for it, $25 billion takeover by Silver Lake. Talk about a shakeup.
That's some serious business right there. And it's interesting because Emmanuel's stepping down as CEO, but he's staying on as chairman. So he's not out of the picture entirely.
Right, but the day-to-day operations, that's all shifting to Mark Shapiro. So for anyone following the, like, intricate dance of power in Hollywood, this is a huge shift.
Absolutely. We're talking about the very top of a major, major player in the entertainment world.
And this is where it all circles back to the Baldoni situation.
Here's where the connections start getting really interesting.
Owens reminds everyone about a previous discussion of hers about this leaked podcast where Emmanuel supposedly admitted to firing Justin Baldoni.
Yeah, and the reason he gave.
It seemed like it all boiled down to loyalty to Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he even used a pretty dismissive term for Baldoni.
Which, for you listening, really underscores the power dynamics at play.
Totally. Like Emmanuel's comments, if they are accurate, suggest that sometimes personal relationships and loyalty can overshadow professional decisions in Hollywood.
It's a bit of a who you know situation.
And now, with this change at the top of Endeavor, it makes you wonder if things might shift.
Could be. I mean, could new leadership change how all this plays out with Baldoni, Lively, and Reynolds?
Yeah, yeah. It's a question worth pondering as this whole thing unfolds.
That's right.
Okay, let's zero in on Blake Lively's legal moves for a minute. Owen spent some time talking about Lively's attempt to get dismissed from Justin Baldoni's defamation lawsuit. Oh, what's the main argument her lawyers are using to try and get her out of this?
So basically, Lively's team is saying that the lawsuit shouldn't be valid because it's tied to sexual harassment allegations. And the law often has like built-in protections against people being retaliated against for reporting harassment.
Right, right. So they're saying Baldoni's defamation suit is actually a way to get back at Lively for speaking out. Now, Owens actually acknowledged that in a typical case, like a regular employer-employee situation, if you file a complaint with the Civil Rights Department, there are protections in place to prevent you from getting fired for doing so. She even used the word freeze, like it puts a freeze on them taking negative action against you. But then she argues that Lively's situation is different. How so?
Well, Owens claims that Lively went beyond just filing that initial complaint. She says Lively worked with the New York Times, sharing private emails and texts, stuff involving PR agents, all with the goal of hurting Baldoni's reputation and his company, Wayfarer.
So in Owen's view, this shifts things,
Totally. It goes from a protected act of reporting to something more like defamation.
which doesn't have the same legal protection.
Nope. And Owens was very clear about that distinction. She's drawing a line between that initial report and what she sees as these additional actions by Lively.
Got it. So there are a couple of things that Lively's team is using to try to get the case dismissed that Owens pointed out, and she actually called them, quote, funny. What were those arguments that she found so interesting?
All right, so the first big one is that they're saying Baldoni can't prove what's called actual malice. And this is a really high bar to clear in defamation cases, especially when you're dealing with public figures.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Basically, Lively's team is pointing to parts of Baldoni's original complaint, where his lawyers acknowledged that Lively truly believed the things she was saying. So they're arguing that even if what she said was damaging, she didn't say it knowing it was false or with this reckless disregard for the truth.
That's a tricky one. But Owens didn't seem too convinced by this whole Lively genuinely believed it argument.
Not really, no. Owens kind of hinted that maybe Lively was more motivated by all the negative press swirling around and that maybe this was a way to control the narrative, so to speak.
Makes you wonder how you can ever really know what someone's true intentions are.
It's tough, right? Like, Lively's team says it's genuine belief to counter this idea of malice, but Owens is suggesting that maybe the bad publicity was a driving factor. It just shows how much these legal arguments come down to interpretation, to trying to figure out what someone was thinking.
For sure. The second argument from Lively's team that Owen brought up was this idea that nothing Lively said was actually a lie. It just lacked, like, crucial context.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Classic legal maneuvering. Right. They're basically saying that, sure, some of Lively's statements might have made Baldoni look bad, but technically they weren't straight-up lies.
But because they left stuff out, they created a false impression.
Exactly. But they're saying that just leaving out context shouldn't count as defamation.
So it's all about the fine print.
Pretty much.
And Owens gave a few specific examples of what she saw as missing context. Like, what were some of those?
Okay, so one example had to do with filming simulated nude scenes. Lively's team admitted that there wasn't an intimacy coordinator present for these scenes. But what they left out was that Lively herself had refused to meet with the coordinator.
Oh, wow.
And she said she didn't think one was necessary.
Interesting. What else?
Another example Owens gave was about Justin Baldoni going into Lively's trailer. Her lawyers made it sound like he just barged in, but they conveniently forgot to mention that she'd actually texted him, invited him in.
So it's all about how you frame it.
Totally. And maybe the biggest example Owens talked about was this video that someone showed Lively. It was Baldoni's request. It was a video of his wife giving birth at home.
Okay.
Now, Lively's team did acknowledge that a part of the video was shown to her, but they left out the part about it being a childbirth video. Instead, they made it sound like it was something inappropriate, maybe even bordering on pornography.
Yeah.
And Owens was not having it.
She really pushed back on that one.
Oh, yeah. She was adamant that Lies by omission, as she called them, absolutely carry legal weight. She's arguing that these omissions were deliberate and that they painted a false and very damaging picture of Baldoni.
So, what we're seeing here for everyone listening is a carefully constructed legal strategy where both sides are trying to control the narrative.
It's like a chess match, really. Each side making their moves, trying to outmaneuver the other.
Fascinating. Okay, then Owens moves on to what she thinks is the most important lawsuit in this whole saga. The one between Stephanie Jones PR, who is Wayfair's original PR team, and Justin Baldoni, along with his current crisis PR team. Why does Owens see this one as the key to it all?
Because, according to Owens, Stephanie Jones is the one who allegedly gave Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds all this information, emails, texts, all that, which they then used against Baldoni. So if you really want to understand how this negative story about Baldoni took shape, how it got out there, you got to understand how this information flowed, who had it, who gave it to whom.
It's like it's the missing link.
Exactly. This lawsuit could expose a lot about how the whole narrative against Baldoni was built and spread.
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar with the Hollywood PR world, who is Stephanie Jones and why is she such a big deal?
Stephanie Jones is a very, very well-respected PR person in Hollywood. She ran her own firm, Stephanie Jones PR, for years, and her client list was A-list all the way. We're talking Dwayne Johnson, Tom Brady, Jeff Bezos, Lauren Sanchez.
Wow, she's connected.
Big time. And having those kinds of clients gives you a lot of power in the industry. People didn't want to mess with her because her reach was so vast.
All about who you know, right?
Absolutely. And it goes even deeper because her husband, Jason Hodes, is a senior partner at WME. He represents people like Tom Brady.
Ah, so there's that tie-in with Ari Emanuel's company again?
You got it. So Stephanie Jones is right at the center of this whole ecosystem of talent and PR in Hollywood.
Okay, but Owens also pointed out that Stephanie Jones has had some PR troubles of her own lately. What's been going on with that?
So starting around May 2024, there were all these reports from places like Puck News and Business Insider that some of her biggest clients, like Dwayne Johnson and Lauren Sanchez, had left her firm. And the reason, it was all this talk about erratic behavior. And then there was this website and these anonymous social media accounts that popped up, supposedly sharing stories about how employees were treated badly at her firm. Owens even compared it to that whole Devil Wears Prada thing.
Oh, wow. So even the people who control the narrative can find themselves in the spotlight.
It's true. Nobody's immune to scrutiny.
And all this happened around the same time that Jennifer Ale left Joneswork PR, the firm that was specifically handling the Wayfarer account. That timing seems significant.
It really does.
Hmm.
And it's not just the timing, it's the way Ale left that's so interesting. According to the lawsuit, just 2 days before her last day, after she'd already given 6 weeks' notice, Stephanie Jones called her into her office and basically forced her to hand over her phone.
Hold on. Forced her?
Yeah, like it was this whole thing. Security was there, a forensic data expert, a lawyer. The firm's chief of staff even flew in from New York. Imagine leaving a job and having that happen.
Intense. Owen seems to think this whole phone incident is how Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds might have gotten those communications that ended up in the New York Times.
Yeah, that's Owen's theory. She thinks Stephanie Jones, maybe suspecting Errol was involved in the negative press, wanted to grab any sensitive info before she left. And then Owen suggests maybe that info was passed on to Leslie Sloan PR, the firm that represents Lively and Reynolds.
Okay, so that's the potential link Owens is making.
Exactly. And Owens also mentioned that there are rumors going around that Tom Brady might be leaving Stephanie Jones PR as well.
So there's a lot of drama unfolding behind the scenes.
Yeah, lots of whispers.
So Owens lays out all this, these lawsuits, these connections. What does she ultimately think is the driving force behind it all?
She's convinced it all boils down to tremendous Hollywood ego. Like, in her view, everything that's happening is fueled by these huge personalities and this sense of self-importance that runs rampant in the entertainment world.
It's almost like a case study in how power and ego can drive people's actions.
That's a great way to put it. It helps explain some of these, like, irrational behaviors we're seeing.
Okay, let's shift gears one more time. Owens also talks about this surprising turn of events with a Substack mom blogger who goes by House and Habit. Her real name is Jessica Reed Krause, and Owens says they used to be friendly. What happened there?
So Owens explained that her PR person got a tip that House and Habit was supposedly working on a, quote, hit piece on Owens and her husband.
A hit piece? So what was it supposed to be about?
It was allegedly going to try to link Owens' husband to Andrew Tate.
Wow.
Now, here's the interesting part. Owens wasn't really fazed by it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she said she decided to let it run. Her reasoning was that she didn't believe any of it was true, and that, in her experience, spreading lies just makes you look bad in the end.
Hmm. Interesting strategy.
Yeah, kind of playing the long game.
So, what actually ended up happening? Was it the big expose everyone was expecting?
Not quite. Owens described it as more of a, quote, petty piece in Krauss's newsletter. It wasn't about her husband at all. It was more about Owens and Megyn Kelly, accusing them of copying Krauss's style.
Okay.
And it also made this comment about how conservatives are, like, late to the game when it comes to Me Too issues.
And Owens had a pretty strong response to that, right?
Oh, yeah, she shut it down. She said conservatives were actually some of the first people to raise concerns about the Me Too movement, about making sure there's evidence, about due process. She even brought up Amber Heard as an example where skepticism was totally warranted.
Makes sense.
She also mentioned how successful her Brigitte Micronome series has been, as proof that her current work is in line with her long-standing interests.
Yeah, that series got a lot of attention.
Oh, yeah. She even mentioned that Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz had publicly praised it, along with her deep dive into the Harvey Weinstein case, big names backing her up.
For sure, for sure. And then things get really interesting with House and Habit because Owens drops this bombshell about a personal connection that might explain Krauss's behavior.
Here's where it gets juicy.
Owens revealed that Jessica Reed Krauss, the House and Habit blogger, actually lived with Jessica Mann during the Weinstein trial. And Jessica Mann was one of the women accusing Weinstein.
Whoa.
Right. And Owens said they're friends, follow each other on social media, all that.
So that changes things a bit, doesn't it?
It really does. Owens is suggesting that this connection could explain why Krauss was so critical of her work on the Weinstein case, why she was trying to get people not to watch it.
Maybe it wasn't just about different opinions. Maybe there was some personal stuff mixed in there.
Right. So Owens is basically saying that House and Habit was doing
PR for someone she's close to, and she called it dishonest, especially since they used to be cool with each other. And Owens had supported Krauss's work in the past. It's a reminder of how blurred the lines can get between personal and professional, especially online.
For sure. Now, before we wrap up, Owens briefly mentioned a few other things. What were those?
She talked about her plans to cover the Harvey Weinstein trial, said she's going back to her research on the JFK files, even mentioned a new lead, someone named Reuven Zelinsky and his father. Oh, and she gave a shout-out to her sponsors, Home Title Lock and American Financing, along with a warning about home title theft scams. You gotta love a good sponsor shout-out.
So this deep dive into Candace Owens' video has been a wild ride. We've gone from Hollywood drama to legal battles to online feuds. It really shows how interconnected everything is.
It's like this web of relationships and motivations all tangled up. And for you, the listener, it's a reminder to always look deeper, to question the narratives we're presented with.
Exactly. And on that note, here's something to think about. In this age of instant information where everyone's online, constantly sharing, how much of what we see is actually genuine? How much is carefully crafted by PR teams and personal agendas?
It's a great question. And maybe there's no easy answer, but it's worth considering.
It is! Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Catch you later.